Traffic is an all too familiar sight in California, particularly within the Bay Area during weekday transit. Population increases as municipal infrastructure struggles to keep up, leading to more cars on the roads and greenhouse gases emitted. The Paris Agreement's goal of well below 2 degrees Celsius increase above pre-industrialized levels highlights CO2 as a contributing factor, especially within the transportation sector, which amounts for approximately one-fifth of United States greenhouse gas production. The agreement also includes guidance to make finance flows consistent with a pathway towards low greenhouse gas emissions and climate-resilient development. This call to action brings together economists and scientists to construct marginal abatement cost curves, or MACCs, maximizing the net benefit per total cost exhibited at Q star. To reach the Paris Agreement's goals, the C40 Climate Leadership Group estimates that $375 billion is required between 2016 to 2020 by C40 cities alone. Developed nations have pledged a gross amount of $100 billion a year until 2025. However, this does not include the private sector. McKinsey & Company, constructing a global marginal abatement cost curve, found that many measures dealing with transportation are profit positive. Investment will result in an overall net benefit to society. IPCC 2006 guidance for finding the total amount of CO2 emissions from vehicle transportation method has been modified for use at the municipal level, as the tiers of analysis are not appropriate for this large-scale costing. Caltrans data with stations and associated number of cars passing per day and directionality was utilized in comparison to the Caltrans District 4 or Bay Area highway network. First, the identification of different directions within the network and stations needed association. Identification of the north and west vectors, followed subsequently by the identification of the south and east, allowed for separation of each of the networks. The flow was then multiplied by the number of cars, N, by the segment's length along the network's flow, D, the total distance, in kilometers of the north and west flow. Repeating for the south and east directionality, the sum of these numbers represents the median daily weekday transit per year for the entire identified network. The stations are not equally spaced out throughout the entire Bay Area highway network, but rather concentrated along highly traveled segments of highway. A spatial join of the stations to the unmodified network shows that many locations, such as Highway 1 running along the coast, have high traffic flows but no stations on the route. Streamlining the network identified the stations and the network pieces they corresponded to, resulting in the highways identified in red above. This station data was joined to the newly defined network to demonstrate the total distance in kilometers traveled per weekday. The gross median distance traveled in the network per day was then fitted with a power function to project the distance traveled out to the year 2050, forecasting the potential emissions in a business as usual or BAU scenario, assuming a particular method is not pursued aggressively as defined by McKinsey & Company's MACC methodology. A projected population increase of approximately 1% a year, defined in the Plan Bay Area 2017 report, until 2040, extended out to 2050 for continuity, presented by the gray line. CO2 emission in kilograms is able to be expressed by identifying the median age of vehicles in the United States and with comparison to the average CO2 emission for the number of years displayed in yellow. Multiplying the associated total kilometers with the moving average of CO2 emissions, a BAU CO2 weekly production in meters cubed is realized. This then allows for the construction for a MACC for each mechanism. In the case of highway repair, if the lowered maintenance cost exceeds all of the other costs, which may include keeping the cars longer as they are in better condition, it is net profit positive, equal to X dollars gained on average per unit. Marginal abatement cost curves are needed to link the Paris Climate Agreement's mandate for streamlining financial flows for the most benefit, as the funding required far exceeds the amount currently available. Upfront mechanisms for CO2 abatement will have the greatest effect on meeting the below 2 degrees Celsius global goal.